I don't know what you made, Dustin, but this is a new episode of Coffee and Commerce, which I'm really excited here with my partner in crime, Zubin, and we have a wonderful guest. Zubin, please say hello and intro our tremendous, tremendous guest.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Great to have Mona Kattan here, the global president of Huda Beauty.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Virtually.
So Mona, why don't you tell everybody, why don't we spend the first 5 minutes creating the context of this show of what your journey, how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, so I had a really interesting journey. I studied finance in university, and when I first graduated, I kind of took your kind of typical Middle Eastern career path of like fulfilling your parents' dreams of having, you know, a really stable career. So I went into banking. I got an investment banking job, and you know, I just found myself feeling very unfulfilled, and I really felt like I was always longing for more. And, you know, I only gave it about a year, and a year into it, I was just like, you know what? I spoke to my dad. I was like, look, I really know that you want me to be, you know, doing something that's very stable and assured, because my father had very humble beginnings. And for him, like seeing his children have like a very stable career path where he was guaranteed, you know, the very basics was very important to him. So when I went to him and I was just telling him like, you know what, Dad, I just can't do this anymore. I don't feel like this is for me. I need to try to do something of my own. I think I terrified him, and it was very challenging for my parents to accept. But I knew ultimately it was something that I really needed to do. I always struggled feeling like I was a part of an organization where I wasn't able to have a big impact, and I wasn't able to act on creative ideas that I wanted to create, or any sort of other ideas that I wanted to have. I just felt like there was so much bureaucracy, which I hated, and I still try to make sure that we don't have that in our organization, because for me, it's just something that I feel is really damaging to someone's dreams and passion and their enthusiasm. So I got really sick of the corporate world. I quit my job. I was only about 24 years old, and I actually had no plan at all. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just, you know, figuring things out one step at a time. A friend of mine was like, let's start a PR agency together. So we created an agency, and I did that for about 2-3 years. And I was basically just self-employed, trying to cover my bills.
What was the biggest thing you think you learned about yourself, and things that you had to work on by having that first chapter?
I think like the positive part of myself that I learned was I'm definitely like a very optimistic person. Throw anything towards me, I can solve problems. I'll never give up. Like I will go to the end of the world to find a solution, and actually like many solutions to one problem. So I never give up. I think my biggest challenge that I had in that stage of my life in my 20s was really the ability to say no. Know when to raise my standards, to challenge people and be really direct with people. I had an issue kind of being like, okay, well, this is how much you're going to pay me for this. And I just had a challenge being super direct.
Asking. The conversation of money was a challenge. Yeah. The conversation of raising your prices once you got comfortable with the price point was a challenge.
It was a big challenge, and I almost felt guilty asking for people to pay me for their services. And it was just a really weird stage of my life. And I think through therapy, I've understood it more. It's just like a weird thing that I feel like I've always associated money with guilt. Like I felt bad spending money. I felt bad asking for money. So I didn't really know my worth, which is definitely something that I look back and I'm like, oh, if I only knew that sooner, you know, I would have been in a very different stage. But again, I'm so happy things worked out the way they were. So that was an early stage of my career, was just being an entrepreneur, was being self-employed, being a consultant. I did PR for about 3 years. And then I ventured into my own beauty salon, which definitely taught me a lot. It was a dream at the time. I'm obsessed with beauty. I'm obsessed with pampering. I'm obsessed with making people feel good about themselves. I used to love seeing people come in and leave and just to feel transformed. I loved giving women that confidence, and men. But it was a ladies only salon. But I love seeing people feel like very confident, and that transformation really, really, it invigorated me, and it made me just over the moon. So then my sisterhood and I are super close. Who you met, she was a makeup artist at the time. And then I remember just thinking about it one day because I'd see her so passionate, and she was doing so many great things with just her makeup artistry. And I remember a lot of my friends were actually her clients, and they'd always come to me and they'd be like, wow, I really want to get your sister's lashes. Like, where do you sell them? And I kept having to tell them, like, sorry, we don't sell them. These are ones that she creates by hand. She's cutting them up. She's creating lashes herself. And I kept remembering that question over and over again. Like, I'm like, why do I always get this question about her lashes? And then I was like, why can't we create them? It can't be that hard. So it was like kind of an epiphany. And I was like, let's create a brand together. And I asked Huda if she'd be interested. And she was like, absolutely, if you think we can make it happen. And I was like, we can make anything happen. You know, if we have a vision, we can make it happen. But I just want to know that you are into this, because this is really for you. And she was obsessed with the idea. And then we just, started Googling every lash manufacturer in the world. We started getting samples. And before you know it, I mean, obviously it took a lot of sweat, blood, and tears. We found the right manufacturer, and we begged Sephora for over a year to take us on. And after like a year of constant persistence, they finally, had the confidence to launch our brand in Dubai. And that was that was 2013. And, it's 7 years later. Now we're and all Sephora's in the US, we're in all over Europe, Asia Pacific, Middle East, North Africa. We've got a huge presence, so it's pretty magical how things started. Now we have 3 global offices. We have an office in Dubai, an office in the UK, we have an office in LA. We have 3 brands now. We have Huda Beauty, which is the color cosmetics brand. We have Kayali, which is the fragrance brand. And we also have Wishful, which is a skincare brand. And we have over 250 awesome employees.
I love that. Zubin,
Sorry,
any questions?
No, that's amazing.
That's what everybody needed that's listening. So we need that.
Yeah, thanks, Mona. So, we kind of talk about the past in passing, essentially, like investment banking, PR, etc. How much of that helped you initially and helps you now as you run this global organization?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was every single kind of experiment that I had. I mean, I was a serial entrepreneur, so I dabbled into so many different things. And I think every single bit of experience I had helped, because initially it was just Huda, myself, my sister Alia. For the first couple of years, it was just 3 of us. And then we finally had enough money to hire a PA. But essentially,
I'm sorry to interrupt, because I think this will help a lot of people. And to be frank, I'm always 100% focused on who's watching and listening. What was the biggest challenge in working with family in that environment? Like I think so many people, I get asked a lot because I worked with my dad and I worked with my brother, and a lot of people really struggle with this.
Yeah.
Give me like 3 to 4 hot takes on things that you learned and continue to learn in family life, because now you're adding another sister. So I'm like, okay, you really lived it. What was the hardest, and what's something you're collectively so much better at today than you were years ago?
Well, when we first started, I used to struggle a lot with my sister Huda, because we have like polar opposite personalities. And I would just always disagree with her. We're really close in age, we're about 18 months apart. So like if she'd say, the sky was blue, I'd be like, it's off blue or whatever. Like we'd always like argue with each other, and we'd waste a lot of time just kind of like deciding who was right. And I think a lot of it had to do with ego and trying to prove who knows more or whatever. But when I really started to appreciate the differences that we have, between herself and even my sister Alia, and even Huda's husband Chris, who joined us after a couple of years, when I really started to appreciate how they were different to me and try to see things from their point of view, it really gave me a lot of perspective, and it gave all of us perspective. And I think that we all made collectively better decisions because we were thinking from a very different perspective. So I think really like drop your ego. Doesn't matter who's right. You all have to like work towards a vision. You all want to succeed, and make it something much larger than yourself. Like for us initially, I think when we first launched the brand, it was about solving a problem. There's no great lashes in the market. It was a challenge. It was exciting. But I think after 3-4 years, and I think really after we got our evaluation and we got our investors on board and we had the opportunity to sell the company for over $1 billion. And after that stage, it became like when we declined the offer, we were like, okay, this is so much more than the money. Now this is like about deep, meaningful, issues we want to solve together, about changing the world as much as we possibly can together, about disrupting the industry, and also creating an incredible company for people to have their dream jobs that we never had. So yeah, I think just appreciating each other and learning from each other and having no ego and communicating better. I think I personally used to struggle a lot with communication. If I was upset, I'd be kind of passive aggressive. And now I'm not. I'm like, now as soon as somebody makes me a little bit upset, I like make a note. So I make sure to go back to it later and I don't forget it or shove it under the rug and then explode on them later and like upset them. I think a lot of the things
Fantastic.
I think a lot of the things that I've learned is like really a lot to do with psychology. Like I think get a good therapist.
Interpersonal skills. I mean, running a business is about the people.
100%.
100%. I mean, the reason I bought Zubin's company over the other companies that I could have looked at was my belief in how he manages humans.
Yeah.
And who he is as a human.
It's everything.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Mona, talk to us a little bit about your go-to-market strategy, because you were, as you mentioned, like you begged Sephora to get in. You finally got into Sephora in Dubai. Talk us through that path all the way through basically having the online experience you have right now. And let's kind of talk a little bit about that and go down that alley of being an omni-channel brand, selling online, selling in retail. How did all that happen and where are you now?
So I think, again, like we're so lucky that things happened the way they did. We had a blog before we actually launched the brand. So Huda had hudabeauty.com way before we even had the thought of creating a brand. So we had the audience already there. It was kind of like a dream come true for any sort of like business. So we had an audience who was ready for the product that we were going to launch. And they were watching closely. And we started off very small. We launched, we launched in one door. We launched in Sephora Dubai Mall, which I think was a great thing because we focused, we drove all the traffic.
That's, by the way, on the record, because I've been to that Dubai Mall, like just for everybody around the world, that's one big fucking door. It is one door, but it's like 800 doors in a lot of ways.
Yes, it's huge.
By the way, Zubin, I apologize, Mona. By the way, Zubin, everyone's completely freaking out in the comments that your volume's super low. So you fix that or they're going to continue to scorch you.
There you go.
There we go. No, not you, Mona. You're great. Go ahead.
So we launched in Sephora Dubai Mall, one door. We drove all the traffic there. And I think in retrospect, that was a great strategy. We built up crazy demand. We were constantly dealing with stock issues because we, of course, didn't know how to forecast. We had no idea what kind of demand there would be. But that went on for about 6 months to a year. And then we expanded to all of the Middle East Sephora doors. And then it was about another year and a half, we launched in Harrods in the UK. So that was our first, door out of the region. And we were continuously begging for Sephora US to take the brand. And it took a very, very long time. Initially they were like, okay, you're a lash brand out of the Middle East. Like, why do you think you're going to have a demand in the United States? But I really think it was the power of social media that they underestimated at the time, because I think that was still before the time of people seeing these explosive social media brands really take off. And when we launched in the US, they were really shocked by the amount of demand that we had there. And, in all honesty, we just kept growing our page, and it was just a natural thing. Like the more we grew, the more we expanded, the more our audience and our community grew. And we were able to go pretty much global. I mean, we're in all areas except Africa, certain parts of Africa and South America, but we have a very big global presence in such a short time in comparison to all the legacy brands and, that had taken like basically decades to build themselves. I think it was really for the power of social media.
And from that beginning, that you had the hudabeauty.com blog, at what point did you start actually selling product online after being in Sephora?
And this is a very selfish question. And how did Huda think about navigating those early days? Was there any kind of blueprint or anything that kind of inspired some of her executions?
So we had the blog. We launched it in April 2010. And we launched the product in February 2013. So it was quite a few years. And we were going hard. Huda was going hard. She was blogging herself all on her own, about 3 posts a day, on top of doing makeup every single day. So she was really running the show almost on her own. I was helping from like a business strategy perspective and doing her PR and everything. But when it came to really the vision and just the way, the strategy to launch, I do have to say it's completely Huda's vision. You know, she is a visionary. She's an artist, and she's got a really incredible creative vision, and also a great vision when it comes to leadership. So she always thought big from day one. You know, for her, it was always like, how do we go global? How do we make everybody in the world relate to our products? How do we serve everyone? So it really did come from Huda. I think she has the natural intuition for it, but we also love to read books. We love watching people like yourself. We love self-development, and I've been obsessed with it since I was a teenager. So for me, it's something that I've always been inspired by people like yourself. So we were always pushing ourselves to grow. And I think we've learned from people who've done it before us, like yourself, Gary. You know, you're awesome. So
well, but you know what's so exciting about it, and when Huda and I were talking about how she read Crush It and what she got from it, what's so exciting for me now is to watch how many people, I mean, even in the comments right now, how many people are getting value out of it. It's just good, and karma and sharing positive, practical, real things is what's so beautiful about the infrastructure we now live in. And it's what's really fascinating, and Zubin, what I love about their execution, and it's harder to do this now because companies like yours, Zubin, ours together, VaynerCommerce, eliminates the friction of go-to-market in a way that wasn't in place when Mona and Huda were building their business. Definitely not when I was building mine. Like you actually almost had to 10 years ago build a blog and a Twitter account, a YouTube for 2 years before you could even imagine. You know, there is no doubt in my mind that there's people that for 6 months winning on TikTok can go right into VaynerCommerce, create a product and do extremely well. It's just so different even already. And we're both young in our careers, and it's already a totally different world. In a lot of ways, I wonder if, you know, Mona and Huda and I had the advantage of building a true community over time before we went. Not that the new TikTok regime isn't, but we got to sit with it for a while and know what they wanted, versus what I think you see a lot of now, which is 6 months, you're huge. Oh shit, I need to make money besides brand deals. Let me make a hoodie, or let me slap my name on some shit. And you didn't have time to R&D it, research and develop it, live with it. And the product, I mean, it took me forever to launch Empathy. Right. You know, like I sat, like, in essence, from the first episode of one, it took me, you know, 13 years to launch a product.
Wow.
You know, I've had businesses, but a product. And so I got to sit with it. And so I wonder if do you agree with that, Mona? Do you think that the time of cultivating that community mixed with, you know, Huda's vision and your understanding of the products that you wanted to put out, that there was a lot of value in that patience time?
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I also think that, you know, we were working at a time where I think it was harder in some ways because we didn't have the crazy social media exposure. You know, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, there was no TikTok around when we first started. But I think that the space was less crowded for these uberly passionate people who were pumping out lots of constant content. So I think that the advantage was if you were authentic and if you were persistent and consistent, you'd grow your following bigger, faster, where now, like, you're competing so hard to be one of the many Instagrammers who have millions of followers, or the many TikTokers who also have millions of followers. There's just so many people right now, and everybody is capitalizing off their product because of success stories that they've seen, and everybody wants to kind of jump on it quick.
By the way, breaking news, India bans TikTok in its country. Wow. India banned 59 Chinese-based. I'm just reading the headlines, so I don't know if I just read it right before I went on. I see it again. Like, pretty intense. Like, intense. It's going to be a very interesting decade with technology and platforms. Zubin?
Just one thing to lean back on, the community. I think that, to Gary's point, at the time that Gary was building his community, you were building your community. Obviously, those platforms didn't exist. But you were able to build the community you wanted, and you were able to create the content that you wanted to create. I think part of the challenge now is, like, people are creating content based on what they think people want, which is fine, but they really need to lean into what matters to them. And even those people on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, The ones that get genuine following that will leave the platform for them are because they do something that matters to them and that matters to kind of the people that are watching. So I think it's that gap of like, you do it on TikTok, you do it on Instagram, but getting that person to leave and join you on your own site is a big gap that exists. But again, like, it goes back to the community that you built and the way you've been able to activate them, which still works today. It just takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're spot on. And I've just recently started my new YouTube channel, and I'm trying to do things that I'm trying to take away what I think people want me to produce and just do what I really want to create. And it's challenging. Like a lot of the things that I'm creating that have nothing to do with beauty, the engagement's low, but I'm like, I'm going to keep going because it's what I really want to talk about. But you're absolutely right. I think we're always constantly like, there's a background voice kind of telling you, okay, that's not going to perform well, that will. And you kind of second guess yourself. But I think the people who are creating incredible, visionary content are people who are just doing what they want to do.
Two things that I want to add to the show, Zubin. I apologize.
Go ahead.
I don't know how many questions you have for this format. Obviously, we're all improv all the time, and I have a little bit of a issue, so I'm gonna have to jump a little early before our time's up here. There's a ton of great questions coming from people that are watching live. Zubin, do you want at some point for Dustin to throw up questions in here? Might be a good idea because I think
that'd be great.
A lot of people. Yeah, awesome. All right,
Mona's
Dustin, maybe
we'll do it.
Mona,
Yeah,
for
sure.
some questions.
Of course.
Dustin, maybe at 1:35 when I transition out, you can go into some Q&A. I don't know if he's coming, but
Cool.
Fair enough. Oh, there he is. I just wanted Dustin. I just wanted the four corners. That was very selfish. I just wanted four people. The balance is right to it. Excuse me, Mona, before I bounce out of here, where do you see the biggest opportunity in attention to build brand awareness for your brand right now? From your perspective, one lady's point of view, obviously a very large size company compared to most of ours. Where do you see an opportunity right now? Which platform, which execution, whether it's shopper marketing, whether it's advertising, whether it's a country given the global scale?
Yeah.
Like if I said to you, hey, we have to bet, if I was on the board, I was like, hey, we got to bet the farm on something right now. Where, let's, where do you want to put these couple of like targets? What are you looking at? What are you seeing maybe that can bring some value?
Well, that is definitely a tough question because from a platform perspective, I do think it's really challenging right now. Of course, we are investing in TikTok a lot, as you are. You're a big inspiration for that. I know you're going hard on TikTok.
It's so much. Somebody just asked, so now what if the US bans TikTok? I'm like, then it's banned for everybody and we all move somewhere else. But all the people that took advantage of gaining awareness and community doesn't go away. They find them on, Instagram or Twitter, things of that nature. So I think people forget how brand works. Like, I don't care if Vine went away. I gained a lot of awareness on that platform, which came with me somewhere. And that's why that stuff matters. Because all of these platforms probably won't be the platforms in 15 years. We've seen that with Friendster and MySpace and things of that nature. So, so TikTok is...
Yeah, I'd probably say for us, it's probably a territories perspective. So I'd say China, Asia, South Korea, those are areas we're really focusing on right now. I think that, their economy is clearly doing really well. And I think there's a lot of room in that market to grow. So that's a huge focus for us, but it's a different world and they have different social media platforms that we're basically starting from scratch on. So it's definitely challenging, but I think there's a huge opportunity there. Yeah.
Mona, I want to ask you something. So what we've seen, obviously, retail online. And everybody's saying retail needs to evolve. Retail needs to evolve and come closer to digital. They need to be experiential, so on and so forth. And not much conversation about what digital needs to do to become more personal. One of the things that I found really cool on your site were your one-to-one virtual consultations with your pro artists. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think it really humanizes the brand and brings somebody much closer to that retail interaction that they kind of maybe long for.
Well, to be honest, this was an amazing idea that came from our senior leadership team. And it was really initially only to help preserve any jobs that might need to be cut. So we're like, how can we make sure that everybody's still staying productive? And how can we make sure that all the teams that normally work in store are still busy? So we just wanted to make sure that we didn't let go of any single people. And we still haven't to date since, the corona pandemic started, we haven't let go of anyone. So we wanted to resource them in a different way. So we decided to have these consultations online, and we definitely have a lot of learnings, and I definitely took your feedback to the team. So thank you for that. I think that we weren't very direct in the whole process and like whether it was paid for, but it's still something that we are trying to work on. There hasn't been a huge demand for it yet, but I think it's something that we're going to need to evolve and keep growing. And I think that all beauty brands are definitely going to need to jump onto this, because I think even after the pandemic kind of slows down and things settle and go back to normal, I think people are going to get comfortable just shopping from home, and they're going to want to have that experience at home.
Totally. And I think that what's remarkable about it is what everybody kind of listening can take from it, right? So this is something that anybody, even if you're one person starting a brand online, you can learn something from this. So what happens is you go to hudabeauty.com and you can click this virtual consultation link. And it basically gives you a list of individuals that you can book. And you can book a 15-minute, a 30-minute, 60-minute getting ready with an artist, lash application, whatever it is. And then you actually get access to that person for free, complimentary for that period of time. And they sit with you on some sort of Zoom interactive call and walk you through it. And I think it's phenomenal because it's really taking service and what you expect in the best of retail, right? In the best of retail, you want to deal with somebody who's actually giving you value, teaching you something. So you're applying that to digital. Again, if you're just one person, you make your calendar available, you block off how much time you have each day for this sort of thing, make it available on your site. Build that one-on-one interaction. I mean, I think it's fantastic that a brand at your scale is doing it. And I think that anybody, again, even a single person who's running a business should be doing something like this. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're definitely working on improving it. But it was a phenomenal idea from our team. And I think it's just great to make sure that we protect people's jobs, as the retail has slowed down so much. We just want to make sure they're busy and they're feeling productive, and also so they feel excited about what they're doing. Even if we were able to keep them just working from home, like it's very demotivating not to have that interaction. So it's been a great step for us. And we see that the team's also really happy to be used like that.
Mona, what about audio? Before I bounce out, sorry, Zubin, you have
That's
25
exactly what
minutes.
I was going to say.
Thank you.
Exactly
Thank you for the setup. What about audio? Pre-roll podcasts, original podcasts, Alexa skills. What, if anything, are you seeing with that?
In the beauty space, there isn't that much audio only podcast. I think just because it's such a visual topic. But I definitely think there's space for that. There's a few great podcasts that I listen to. Fat Mascara, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it's great. But I definitely think it's unwalked territory, and I think that it's interesting. Huda and I have talked about doing a podcast together, and I'd love to. I don't know if it would necessarily be on beauty particularly. I'd like to explore other topics, but it's not very popular in the beauty space. I think it's just a super visual community, and all the platforms that are attractive to beauty are pretty visual. Instagram is probably the #1 performing platform for beauty still. It's buy now, see now. See now, buy now.
What about the how much do you think about customizable landing pages at scale from content where the conversion may be greater because of the context of the landing page to, the ad that's come in, kind of the dynamic web kind of thoughts? Any thoughts about that? Is it something of a focus? Just curious.
Yeah, we are testing different experiences for different users to see if there are any differences. But to be super honest, I'm just going to be very transparent. We never really had our e-commerce in the forefront until recently, only because we really didn't have a team until recently. It's only been about almost 2 years since we've had a proper e-com team. So we're really building it up now, and we were just so busy just keeping the business together that it wasn't a priority. But now, post-pandemic, it's really become a huge priority for us, because we realized you can't always rely on retailers, and you really do want to try to own that customer relationship. So it's become very, very important, and we're working on making it a more customized experience. Yeah.
Love it. I'm going to leave it at that. I've just been reading so many of the comments. I think there's so much good stuff coming. It's great to see you again. Zubin, take it away. Thanks for having me. Everybody keep watching.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gary.
See you, Gary. Okay, let's do this, Mona. Dustin, feel free to drop in questions, and then we will share Mona's wisdom with everyone.
You're so sweet.
Mona, when are you? When is your? Talk about your YouTube a little bit while the questions come in, and your podcast and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah, so I just started my YouTube channel in February, and it's been something that I think I've been putting off for a very long time, only because I wasn't sure of the direction I wanted to take it into. And I was like, I'm not a makeup artist. I'm not a beauty guru. I like business, and I do love beauty, but I'm not like a professional. So I didn't feel comfortable putting myself in that box. And then I'm also like a perfume lover. I'm a perfume addict, and I've worked on creating the brand, the fragrance brand we have. But I didn't feel good putting myself in that box either. So I kept kind of pushing myself around, and I was like, I don't want to fit into a box. And then I was like, you know what? Why am I trying to put myself in a box when I tell everybody else not to? And I was like, let me just create my channel. I'm going to create content about things that I care about, and it doesn't have to be one particular topic. And I'm just going to experiment and see how it goes. And it's really been something that's purely out of passion. It's not for any other reason. And I do want to go more into the direction of self-help and mental health and things that are going to help motivate people and help people. I think that I feel like, I've had great fulfillment from business, but now I want to fulfill myself from like a very personal perspective and like a higher meaning perspective. So that's the main reason behind my channel.
But I think if Gary's any indication, I mean, you see in the comments, you see how much engagement he gets all over. It's not just one topic. I mean, he's just super broad, and he talks about everything. He talks about life, personal development, this, that, the other. And I think you've got a lot to share, and maybe don't worry about having to focus on one area or another. Just talk about what you know and what you are passionate about, and it'll come. I mean, we're all figuring it out, right? Like I have the same problem. I go on Twitter and I'm like, okay, I don't really just want to tweet about e-commerce. I want to tweet about this, that, the other. Like, what am I going to focus on? But I just put it out there.
Absolutely. I feel like I always tell people not to put themselves in a box. I'm like, just be yourself. If you feel good doing this, do that. If you feel good doing something else, do that too. And you don't need to confine yourself into some sort of box. But I was doing it to myself. So I've decided not to do that anymore. And I'm like, you know what, just do whatever makes you feel good. And if you feel like you're helping anyone at all, then it's totally worth it.
Love it. Okay, so first question, Mona. John Rodriguez asks, what do you see in the VR retail commerce space? I'd love to have a discussion about this. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of room to grow in the VR retail commerce space. It's really challenging because I think with makeup, with color cosmetics, people do really want to feel and touch the product. For me as a fragrance lover, I do think that there's so much that we can do. Maybe we can share kind of like what a fragrance smells like in terms of like a picture, like if you smell a fragrance, you can smell sunshine, almost like a solar effect. You can smell brightness, you can smell the beach. So you could just paint that picture almost. But it is really challenging. I think we have to go and hone in on like the ASMR effect and kind of go full throttle. So like if you're sharing like an eyeshadow, kind of show how the textures are going to look, let people hear it really loudly, let them feel like they're there with you, like swatching it live. I think it depends on the industry. It's really hard. And if I'm honest, I don't think anyone's hit the nail on the head yet, especially in beauty.
Totally, you're right. And I think that like over the last few years, I remember CES, maybe it was like 2 or 3 years ago, there were all of these mirrors that you could basically get for your home. Then you could basically see what it looks like, different types of lipstick, different kinds of eyeshadow, whatnot. But not everybody has access to that. And then there are filters and whatnot. But I think that to your point, it's more than just what it looks like on you. It's that feeling that's missing from like a VR perspective.
Yeah. And to be super honest, like from everything that I've tried so far, I haven't found anything that actually reflects like true color or true texture. So I think it's still very, very challenging. And I think that this is my personal opinion. I think that people need to stop going hard onto VR and think about innovating samples. I think let's go back to basics and think about how do you actually get samples to be more affordable, to get them into the hands of more customers. I think that will probably have a better ROI in the beauty space anyway. I'm not talking about fashion or anything. But I think that we really need to go hard on giving customers a better experience with that.
That's awesome. Just to go back to the previous question before this one, and then we'll get to Seisha's question. It was what marketing channels were the most effective for you, or what channels online were the most effective to building your community when you first started?
I would definitely say Instagram really helped the brand explode. I think beforehand, when we had our blog, when we had Facebook, it was great. We had a great community. But when Instagram took off, I think it was really huge, especially for the beauty community, because I think they also took over a huge part of Instagram. I think that like 20% of Instagram photos are makeup tutorials and hair tutorials and nails.
Wow.
So it was really something that exploded on Instagram. And yeah, I definitely would say that it was the platform that really helped us skyrocket our growth.
So Seish asks, do you believe in scaling up tiny niches that can carve into the beauty industry? So like lip products for darker skin tones, etc.
I definitely think so. I mean, I'm all about niche brands, whether it be for color cosmetics or fragrance or skincare. I think that, there's a lot of people who are still very underserved. And I think that it would be great to try and scale to serve those people in different parts of the world. I think it's hard to scale niche brands because, of course, it's not as profitable when you're niche, but I think it's very meaningful. And I think the people who do end up buying your products and loving your products will be super loyal, and they'll be your biggest advocates because they were so underserved. So I definitely think it's worth exploring, and I think it should get the attention it deserves.
Totally. Just one thing I want to add to that is the word scale is such an interesting concept because it really means something different to everybody. Somebody wants to scale something small and get it to 1 million in revenue a year. Somebody wants to get it to 100, 1 billion, whatever it is. So I think that, like, to answer Seisha's question, as you mentioned, like, yeah, definitely do it. And then I think it's important for people to understand what it is they're looking to achieve. Like, what is your goal? And you can get to that point of scale, and you can have a great lifestyle, and you can have a great business, because it's not just about that top line revenue. It's also the lifestyle you want to have. To your earlier point about mental health, like, where do you want to be in your life? What makes you happy? And if it makes you happy to do that, and you can live the lifestyle you want to lead, then yeah, that's the right amount of scale for you. Anyway,
Absolutely.
just my 2 cents.
I agree. And I think focus on the problem. Like if you're trying to serve, that sort of skin type problem, like focus on finding all the people in the world that have that issue and solving it for them. And if you do that, you will naturally scale, so I think just make sure it's purposeful, and all, the business will come.
Entirely agree with you. So Gustavo Munoz Castro asks, how have you done differently due to the pandemic? Opportunities and challenges?
Well, we definitely had to look at all of our launches that we had lined up for the year, and we had to be a little bit more strategic. We had to scale back on some of the launches and prioritize kind of what we call our A launches, and look at, moving back to 2021, our like C and D launches, and even canceling them because, we just have to make sure that whatever we do bet on, we bet big, and we bet really focused. So that was definitely a big change for us. I think a huge part of it was also just working with our team and being able to stay in touch with them and make them feel appreciated, making them feel like they were in touch with us and we were all communicating well. I think we are very, we're a very loving company, and there's a lot of energy in the company. And as soon as you enter the office, everybody feels each other's presence. So to not have that was definitely challenging initially, but we've just mastered communicating on platforms like Teams, and also just reaching out to each other, calling each other more, and just, making sure that we are still connected, even though we are virtually connecting right now. And just making sure that people understand the main vision of the company. I think that it was a great time to really tell the company and also our community what we're really about. So it was a time that we just kept reinstating what is our vision, what is our mission, why are we here? Even if there was no business today, why are we still going to stand here and keep going? What do we want to do? And it really is to transform the industry.
That's great. And I think that you mentioned earlier in terms of the opportunity. I mean, one of them was just the fact that you were able to take your employees that perhaps were in retail and bring them into the whole virtual consultation world. Yeah. So there's so many opportunities to pivot like that. It's just a matter of having the opportunity and the time and the ability to do it, and really just to think about, to your point, we see this so often recently where organizations that are doing incredibly well, crushing it in retail like yours, and doing quite well online, never really focused on that online channel as much as they are over the last 3 to 4 months. And I think that in of itself is a major opportunity. So Digital Ethan asks, what is your opinion of text message marketing? Do you think we will have numbers like emails nowadays?
Multiple numbers.
Yeah,
I'm
multiple
not
numbers. Sorry.
sure. To be honest, I personally, on a personal level, I hate text message marketing, so I never even open them. I just delete them as soon as I see them. So I'm not really a fan. I know it's very different in the U.S., but in Dubai, it's just it's not something that I see very beneficial. I think that people kind of expect those kind of emails via email, and I think that when they come via text, people are not usually happy with it. So I feel like just go a route where a customer already expects it to come, so they're not disappointed. You know,
I agree with you. It's about, yeah, if you're gonna come into their life in one of the most intimate ways, give them something meaningful. I think there are two examples of text message marketing that I appreciate. One is Gary's wine text. So you basically sign up for wine text and they send you wine offers, and they're great deals, etc. And there's limited supply, so the sense of urgency is there. That works well. And then the other thing is getting notifications on shipping, or getting notifications on things that you've already purchased. So not like trying to upsell you or sell you, but rather just give you an update. I think those sorts of things make sense. But to your point, otherwise it gets cheesy.
I think if it's something you subscribe to, it's fine. But it's like when you get these spam marketing texts, I'm like, that just annoys me so badly. I'm like, I'm going to change my number. So I prefer like an email versus like a text. Like a text for me is like something I expect my family, friends to contact me on. But when it's a company, I'm just kind of like, I don't want to get that from you.
Totally with you. Vishak Vinod asks, how do you handle bad reviews online on your channel page?
I honestly love seeing reviews, positive and negative. And when I get a negative review, I'm just like, let's dissect it. Let's see if it's authentic, if they have good feedback. I think feedback should be your best friend. And when people give you negative feedback, just appreciate it. And as long as they're not doing it just to be nasty, I mean, sometimes you can tell people are doing it just to be nasty. That's a different story. But when they're giving you feedback to improve your product, think of it as a blessing. You're lucky they're telling you, because a lot of people don't tell you what they don't like. They just don't buy your product again. So I appreciate all feedback.
That's awesome. Billy Snacks asks, what advice do you have to do limited edition drops?
I think limited edition drops are definitely powerful, especially if you tie up with the right brand or influencer, and it can be a great way to really move product and gain awareness, and also gain other communities that you didn't have in touch with before. So I think it's great, but I think you do have to be really careful when it comes to forecasting, and also in terms of making things seasonal. We've done things in the past where we made things like a summer product or a winter product, and we realized you kind of like box yourself into something where you're in trouble if you over forecasted. So I think be careful with seasonal products, but I think limited edition, where it's a collab with a brand that you love, you share a similar ethos, but a very different community, it's great for you to grow your community.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to lean in on that last point that you just mentioned. So I think that's really the big opportunity with limited edition drops, not just for your own community, but to do collabs with other brands, because then you're bringing their people into your world and your people into their world.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great way to do it. Absolutely. Totally agree. So Freitshi asks how to do successful collaborations on that front. Great question.
So I would definitely say, again, pick somebody to collaborate with, whether it was a brand, an influencer, celebrity that is slightly different to you, but you have a similar ethos or values to them, and create a product that is different from what you currently offer. I don't think you should offer a product that you already offer and just like repackage it. I've seen that happen before, and I think that it's usually not something that does very well. The performance is usually quite poor, and you're just relying on their audience to sell the product, which is not ideal. I think create something new, a new formula, a new shade, a new cut. If you're talking about fashion, whatever it is, create something new together. I think they take a lot longer to do when it's a new product, a new formula, but I think that's where you create magic, cult-worthy limited edition collaborations that you're going to see a huge impact in. And you want it to be cult-worthy. I think create less collabs, but make sure that every single person wants to buy it and they're going to want to collect it. Even if they're not going to use it, they're going to want a piece of that, magic that you created with that person to keep forever. I think do less, but do powerful collaborations.
Yeah, and I think Mona, it's pretty clear that there's a common theme in a lot of what you're mentioning, which is like authenticity and being genuine. And again, you're spot on that it has to do with those collabs as well, and really figuring out, first you got to figure out who you are as a brand, who you are as an individual, etc., and then find out there's so many other brands that are going to have the same kind of goals, mission, meaning, purpose that you do, and then you follow everything that Mona just mentioned in terms of doing something that's actually unique for the both of you, and maybe finding that middle space that brings you together.
Absolutely.
So Kalia D'Amato asks, influencer marketing for service-based businesses. So is it impactful, basically, I guess is the question. How effective can it be to leverage influencers to sell services?
I think it depends on the service-based business. So if I was a kind of like very small service business, like a local kind of salon or restaurant, I would rather go with a very micro influencer to promote the product, somebody who I knew was based in the area and somebody who I knew would have maybe a more deep reach in that area. Because I think when you go with global influencers, you're of course going to have to pay a lot more for them to promote your service, and then the return is so limited because you only have a few locations. But I think that for a huge global service industry brand, I think it's worth it. But for a small local brand, I think go to somebody who you know in the area who maybe has a smaller reach, but it's very saturated in your area, your city, or wherever you are. But I definitely think it's worth it for sure.
That's awesome. Sean Thomas asks, what if you're not that great on the social media side, but really good on the business side?
I don't know if I fully understand the question.
So like if you you're starting a company, you're really good on the business side, you're not that great on the social media side, what do you do?
I think, hopefully you can find people to work with you who are really good at it. You can always watch people online. There's so many great people who are sharing advice, people like yourself, like Gary, who are sharing great content. And I think just learn from them. And I really am a big believer of just, we have a saying in Arabic, it's al-haraka fi baraka. It means that with movement, there's blessing. So I think just keep doing, don't overthink it too much. I think just keep putting things out there, learn from it, put things out there, learn from it. So don't doubt yourself too much, and don't stress yourself out too much. Just keep going and try things out and experiment. And I think that's the best way to learn, and that's the best way for you to become an expert, right? It's just about practice. So keep going.
That's great. Jishnu, a friend of the shows, asks, thoughts on subscription box model in the beauty space?
I think they're wonderful. I think they're wonderful for brands as well, because truthfully, from a brand perspective, it's always a great way to offload stock. And it's also a great way to get your products in the hands of customers who probably wouldn't buy your product. I think a lot of subscription box customers just love their subscriptions, and they're not as likely to go out and buy a huge bag from Sephora. So it's a great way for them to try your product, and if they love the product, they'll buy it again. And if they don't, it's okay, because you're able to, just get the product into the hands of new customers.
That's awesome. Dustin, let's get one more question from Mona. There are hundreds of questions there. Everybody loves you.
I love you guys.
The chat in the comments as well. So we'll have to have you back on just for a Q&A session. So Rudy Elizabeth asks, I'm currently looking for influencers to help me out. Have not gotten far. Any tips in reaching out?
I'd love to know what kind of business she has. But I would say just honestly go into their DMs. I think people are always a lot nicer than you'd expect. And start with the micro influencers. You can start with people like, you'd be so surprised how much some people who only have a couple, tens of thousands of followers, they can have a huge impact too. And just start growing slowly. You don't have to target people who have over 1 million followers or 5 million followers. Start with micro influencers. They're usually a lot more grateful for you reaching out to, and they're going to give a lot more of their themselves to promoting your product, and I think just grow slowly.
That's awesome. Mona, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
We'll
Thank
have
you.
to do this again later.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions and your comments. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.